Hey there, people! In this video, we'll be covering the list, create, and delete partitions on MBR and GPT disks objective for the RHCSA. To get started, make sure that you have some extra disks added to your virtual machine. For this video, I'll be adding two, one to practice with MBR and another one to practice with GPT. So in the hypervisor tool that you happen to be using, go ahead and find the options to generate and add a disk to a VM, just like you can see me doing right now. So I'm going to add one called AS2 MBR because I'm working with App Server 2, and I'll set the capacity to 6. Then I'll just say finish, and I'll do that again for AS2 GPT, and I'll also set the capacity to 6 GB as well. And then I'll just select MBR, finish, and then do that again for GPT, finish, and there we go. So now I have two disks added to my VM. So I'll go ahead and start up this virtual machine, and I'll get the recording set up so that we can see what's going on. Alrighty then, I've logged into the virtual machine and acquired a root shell. And by simply running the lsblk command, we can see here that our new virtual disks are ready to go. We have a dev VDB and a dev VDC right here. And what we'll be doing now is working with the fdisk and cfdisk commands. After getting a taste of how both of them work, you're free to pick whichever one you prefer, but sometimes you'll want to use a little bit of both to get the job done. Let's make sure that we have them installed by running yum install util-linux. And it should be installed, and it is, so that's good. And now let's start with using fdisk. So simply run fdisk and give the disk that you want to work on. So I'll just give dev vdb, and here is fdisk. And what's nice about this tool is that you can use the M key to get a quick help page if you ever forget how to do something. So that's pretty neat. And since this is a fresh disk, we're going to want to apply a partitioning scheme like GPT or MBR. Just to warn you though, doing this next action is destructive. You won't be able to access your old partitions or data when you reset the partitioning table. I mean, there is a way to recover your stuff even after doing that, but that's out of the scope of this video. Anyways, just like the help page says, we can create an MBR partitioning scheme by simply passing the letter O. And there we go. And so next, to create a new partition, we can just press N and then choose whether we want a primary or extended partition. So extended and logical partitions are a cool trick to squeeze out more than 4 partitions on MBR because, as you can see, MBR only supports 4 on its own with a primary scheme. So for our purposes, a primary partition is fine, so I'll just hit enter to go with the defaults. And next you'll be prompted to specify what partition number you would like to use. So we'll just go with the default, which is 1. And after that, you'll be prompted for the starting sector. So the default for this is perfectly fine. It's just about where it's supposed to be. So we'll just go with that by pressing enter. And then for the last sector, or the ending sector, we can specify a human readable size for this whole partition by passing plus and then the number of gigabytes or megabytes that we want it to be. And yes, you heard me right, gigabytes. So just to be clear, GB stands for gigabytes and GIB is gigabytes. A gigabyte is a billion bytes or 1,000 cubed, and a gigabyte is 1024 cubed. So usually when we just talk about storage casually, no one really cares about the difference, but here it's actually really important. So usually we're going to be working in gigabytes and its related units, so yeah. Let's make this first primary partition equal 4 gigabytes, GIB. And remember the plus sign, and there we go. We created a new partition, and it automatically assigned the partition type to Linux, but we can change that if we want. So if you hit P, and go into that, you can see here that this is our partition table, and this hasn't been written to the disk yet, but it shows us what it's going to prepare on the disk when we do write our changes. And anyways, let's make a second partition that is 2 gigabytes to use up the remaining free space on this disk. So we'll just do the same thing, hit N, set a primary partition, give the partition number as 2 this time, set the first sector as the default, and the last sector we'll just go with the default so it uses up the remainder of the disk. And there we go. So we created another partition and it's 2 GB. Cool. So now if I check P again, there are our imminent changes. Now to write the changes to the disk, we'll just press W, and this will also quit out of fdisk after writing the changes. So yeah. Now let's quickly practice this again on the second drive for GPT. So we'll just open dev vdc in fdisk once again, and press G for a GPT table, create a partition with N, just like so. As you can see, the partition numbers can be a lot more with GPT, so that's pretty neat, but we'll just make our number 1. The first sector is fine, and the last sector, we'll just make it plus 3 GB. And there we go. We created another partition under a GPT scheme. Pretty cool. So yeah, we can just check the partitioning table again and then write these changes. It all looks good. And there we go. So yeah, that was super simple stuff. So I went through that a little bit quickly, and I hope that's okay because it's essentially the same thing as what we did with MBR. Now we can list our changes that we just made with fdisk-l, and then we can give our drives. So that's dev vd, I'll use some brace expansion here, B and C, and there it is. So there is our first information right here. We created 2 partitions, all of that looks correct, and here is our second drive. Looking good. Now, if you check on these numbers a little bit, you'll see here that I left some free space on dev vdc, and I did that on purpose because I want to show you all how to use cfdisk next. So we'll do it on dev vdc this time. So cfdisk is super easy to use. It's basically just a cursor's version of fdisk. In fact, that's exactly what it is. And you can open up your disk in cfdisk just like this. cfdisk dev vdc. And we get this nice user-friendly interface. You can use the arrow keys to pick options down here. And to create a new partition, we'll have to move down to the free space section. And we're going to go to new. And yeah, so you get the gist of it. We just create a partition. The automatic size is the remaining space left on the disk, so we'll just go with that, I guess. And there we go. We created a partition. Now we just have to write it. So we can go to write, say yes, and now it's written. So I mean, fdisk wasn't really that difficult, but some people might like the simplicity of cfdisk. You can also change the partition type like this. So I could go over to type, and I can mark this partition to be Linux swap, for example, just like that. And actually, that reminds me, let me show you how to change the partition type in fdisk as well. So I'll just write these changes, and then we'll go back over to fdisk again. So fdisk dev vdb, I'll just do it on that one. And if we check the help menu again, we can see here that, let me go up a little bit. The letter L is to list known partition types, and the letter T is to change the partition type. So for example, I could mark dev vdb1 as an HFS drive by pressing L to list the partition types, and there they are. And we can see here that where is it? AF is for HFS. So we can just go and hit T to change the type, select partition number 1, that's VDB1, and then the alias is just AF. And now, as you can see, we changed the partition type from Linux to HFS. And we can write these changes now, and that's how we make it persist. And one more thing that I almost forgot to show was how to delete a partition. So we'll just do that quickly by going back into fdisk. And so we can press D for delete and then provide the partition number that we want to get rid of. So for example, I can get rid of number 2, and there we go, now it's deleted. We can also do the same thing in cfdisk. I'll show that as well. So you can just go over to delete, and I'll delete VDB1, and now it's deleted. So now we have no more partitions on this drive anymore. So I can just write these changes, and if I check fdisk-l dev vdb, we can see there that our partitions are gone again. And I mean, that's about it. I hope what I went over was helpful. In a future video, I'll go over how to format a file system onto the disk partitions we made, so that'll be pretty cool. And yeah, thanks for watching.